So, as you said, this all comes from the suspected Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Right now, do we have any conclusion yet that it indeed was carried out by Russia? Indeed, it was ordered by Putin. I think that the suspicion, of course, is there, but have we any concrete conclusion? This is one thing. And secondly, by publishing the entire list of all the possible suspects, is that going to help the situation? Mr. Smith.
Well, I don't think anyone denies that Russia interfered with the election. That really isn't up for question. I think there's overwhelming evidence that they did. I think the bigger issue on the table here is, did the Trump campaign encourage it? Did the Trump campaign reach out to them and ask for their help in meddling the election? And that is what the special prosecutor, Mr. Mueller, is at the core of investigating right now. So I think that we sort of have to keep our eye on what the true core of the story is. There really is no dispute that Russia meddled. There's overwhelming evidence that has been released in the United States. What remains to be seen is how much of a role did the Trump campaign play in either directly asking for them to meddle or being aware of their meddling and doing nothing to stop it.
Mr. Nekrasov, I'm sure the Russian side will say we didn't meddle, but how do you look at the situation? Do you also see it as, an extended list of suspects being put out there, although nothing is being done at the moment, but this is, naming and shaming people who you suspect that have done something wrong?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with the point that there is evidence about Russian meddling, because I haven't seen any evidence. I don't know, maybe somewhere some evidence popped up. I haven't seen anything at all. Secondly, I'd like to say that a lot of this so-called evidence is based on this strange report compiled by a former British intelligence service officer who was based in Moscow in the 1992, 93, 94. And his report, I read, it was laughable. I'm sorry, it read like a tabloid paper writing about Trump and the Russian connection. Now, what was astonishing for me is that the FBI, and along with the FBI, another 13 or 14 intelligence agencies in America, said it's a very, very important document. We must pay a lot of attention to it. We must look into it. And then I realized it's a provocation. Because if on the basis of such documents, and I say documents like this, they are claiming that Russia was involved, then I'm sorry, this whole myth falls apart at once. And for the intelligence services in America to come up with rubbish like that and then claim that they have secret information about this, I'm sorry, this is not evidence. This is either a provocation or an attempt to cover up the failure of the Democrats to win the election, because
what
they are looking.
How do you foresee?
Let me finish with this.
Quickly, please.
Let me finish with this. The Democrats have taken a lot of money on this campaign, from foreigners, by the way. And now they have to explain why they used this money and nothing happened. This is why they're playing this game. This is the main reason why this whole Russian meddling in elections is going on. It's a farce.
Mr. Smith, I know you do not agree, but let's come back to the report again with very limited time left. Mr. Nekrasov, where do you see the report leads to next?
Well, the most important thing, of course, is the secret part of the report, which contains another 400 or something names, which are middle-ranking officials and middle-ranking businessmen. And I think that adds certain pressure on some people, because who knows what's going to happen. Now, according to the former American officials, all the people in the list will have problems. That they said, that is what's going to happen. So it's not just like a list being published and we don't know what's going to happen. This is pressure. This is political blackmail when it comes to Russian officials. And this is an absolutely unacceptable move, because it breaks the unwritten law between Russia and the West. You do not touch acting politicians. You do not go after them. If Russia starts to publish secret information about American officials or British officials or French officials, they would not like it.
Mr. Smith, very briefly,
provocations.
Now it's your turn to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you know, our president loves to watch TV, so hopefully he's watching the show, because I think he'd love to hire your other guest as one of his spokespeople. You're talking right out of the Trump playbook on that. I think, sorry, in all due respect, everything you just said is absolutely laughable. You know, it was the Russians that released all of the emails that they stole leading into the elections. You know, it wasn't the Democrats, it wasn't anybody else, it was the Russians who released all of the emails leading into the election. You know, I think what we're seeing is an absolute escalation in the United States finally saying enough is enough, and that they are going to push back. Senator Cardin, the senator from Maryland who really pushed this, who pushed the Magnitsky Act, you know, I believe has elements of the Kremlin in his sights and is not going to lay off this until we really get to some truth and begin to push back. I think when you're a kid in the schoolyard and the bully pushes on you, every once in a while you got to punch him in the nose and let him know who's in charge. And I think that's what this is about, is pushing back at the Kremlin for their behavior, for
okay, so what you're saying is Russia is getting what it
deserves.
deserves. What you're saying is Russia is getting what